So we're going to talk through supply-side progressivism. As Alex mentioned, I'm in a slightly awkward position here as both the moderator and like the target of the panel. So I'm going to give a very quick riff on what it is that I think I'm talking about, and then ask my esteemed co-panelists to tell me all the problems with it, and then we'll go to you, and you can make statements rather than questions about all the problems with it, and we'll just kind of run it that way. So I began thinking about supply-side progressivism, or the idea that became it a couple years ago, when it felt to me first that the relationship between progressives and technology was breaking down. That there are problems you can solve through social insurance programs, problems you can solve through redistributing money around, but a lot of problems you can't solve that way, or at least the politics would be a lot easier if you get the technology right. So climate was sort of central in my thinking here. If you are able to make clean energy cheaper, more modular, more reliable, the politics of transitioning to clean energy become a whole lot easier. If all you can do is sacrifice, that's a much harder politics. In another area that I think about a lot, sort of animal rights and animal suffering, if we actually could do great plant-based and cell-based meats, that would make it a lot easier for people to transition off of factory farm-based meats. But this becomes true in a lot of areas. I've covered health insurance and healthcare for most of my career on the side of kind of pushing universal health insurance. But for a lot of people, I mean, most Americans have health insurance. So what matters for them, first and foremost, isn't just the cost of the insurance, but what it can buy them. And what matters for that is it's really different if you're spending 15, 20% of GDP on health insurance that actually extends healthy life out to 95 for a lot of people, versus if you're spending 20% of GDP or 25% on healthcare that's no better than what we have today. So I began thinking a little bit about that. And then with sort of rising inflation and watching a lot and living in California, where a lot of good projects, good ideas fail to happen. So we got a bunch of money from the feds a couple years ago to do high-speed rail. You might have noticed nobody got here today on high-speed rail. It would have been neat if somebody had, but that didn't occur. You can't build houses, which has created an unbelievable housing problem in this state, which almost all of our politics now are downstream of. I was very taken with a very small thing that happened in San Francisco, where during the pandemic, like a lot of places, we set up this ability to have little parklets in the restaurants. So you could have this little spot and eat outside, and everybody loved it. It's great. So we decided that we were going to make this permanent. Everybody could have their parklets. The restaurants that had done all this investment in their parklets, they could keep them. That kicked off a regulatory process, which was not a crazy one. I mean, there were difficult questions here. The fire department said, we can't get to a bunch of places because of these parklets, or our trucks are too big, and so we can't, get to streets we need to get to. And are you guys going to be the ones who are responsible for somebody dying in a fire? The disability advocates noted there were a lot of accessibility problems now. The Transportation Authority noted that all these parklets were starving them of a ton of revenue because now you couldn't park there. So anyway, when the regulations came out, most of the parklets became illegal. And what had been 8 pages of regulations became 60. The point of all this is that the progressivism that I have been part of, and I'm still part of, and I'm familiar with, thinks a lot about the demand side. Thinks a lot about what is it that people need that we can subsidize. It doesn't think that much about what don't they have that we need to build. What don't they have that we need to, or what do we have but we need to have more of? And what do we need that hasn't been invented yet but could be with the right financing, regulatory structure? And there are, great success stories here. Even in the very recent past, this is not obviously it was not Progressive who launched this one, but Operation Warp Speed is an incredible achievement of the federal government. It shows what can be done when the incentives are well aligned. And so what I've been trying to do with supply-side progressivism isn't replace what has come before. I still think we need universal health insurance in a truer way than we have it. I still think we should have a great expansion of the child tax credit. But it is to focus progressives on a class of problems that I think we've stopped seeing. The supply of what we need, the ability to create things that we don't have yet but could use, and the recognition that it is often government, not always, but very often government and government regulations and government processes that make it very hard to build these things. that sometimes what you need is not simply to like pass a bill that we should have something, but to recognize that actually the reason that passing a bill to have something hasn't worked is that we, for many good reasons and good intentions, have made those things too hard to build. And the example of that over and over now is blue state governance, where it just is not affordable enough to live in blue states for those states to actually have the moniker of progressivism they want to have.